Hello again. This is Ralph Boehm, legislative update. It's been a while. We're here in Town Hall today because the studio is being worked on. And also my former co-host, Erica Leon, is no longer in the Education Committee, so she won't be my co-host. She got a promotion to Vice Chair of the Health and Human Services Committee, Human Resources Committee. So, but I'll have her probably next year when we see what stuff she has in HHS that we can discuss. But today we're going to discuss the Education Freedom Account that we just passed in the legislature. And with me today is the Vice Chair of the Education Committee, Glenn Cordelli. So, Glenn, you want to start this off?
Thank you. It's great to be with you, Representative Boehm. We've served together 4 terms, something like that. Yeah. It's really been, as you know, a historic year in education for New Hampshire. We've accomplished a great deal, and I think at this point, talking to some national experts, New Hampshire is one of the most free states in the nation when it comes to education. And I believe that there'll be some state rankings coming out this fall, and that should show us near the top of the pack. And really the centerpiece of that is what we've called education freedom accounts. As you know, it's been a long journey.
Fight, yeah.
Yes, it's been a battle, but we got it across the finish line this year. With the help of our friends on the Senate, and applications are now being accepted for the education freedom accounts. And we really call them education freedom accounts because school choice is a very narrow term. Education freedom accounts really open up the door to all kinds of education options for parents. And that's, really why we did it, to give parents options, because even the best school is not the right fit for every child.
Right. And what we'll do is tell you how to apply later during the presentation. But, we want to hit the slide and to show what we're starting with here. So
great. This is a little rundown of some of the education freedom options available to families in New Hampshire. And as we've talked about, education freedom accounts are really the centerpiece. For about 6 years, we've had a tax credit scholarship program where businesses can take a tax credit for and individuals from their interest and dividends tax can take a tax credit and with from the money that they donate to a scholarship fund for students. And something new also that maybe we can touch on are learning pods that the Commissioner Edelblut has worked very hard on to start up in New Hampshire, and there are a number of them in this area, and we can touch on that maybe as well.
Yeah. But main thing is, as long as we can get everything on EFA done, then we can discuss other stuff.
Yep.
Yeah. So
definitely. The education freedom accounts will be managed by the tax credit scholarship organization, Children's Scholarship Fund of New Hampshire, and they are accepting the applications. They will monitor the program for the state. And I guess the most important thing is who's eligible.
Right.
And really, it's very basic. Any child who is eligible to attend a New Hampshire public school is eligible to get an account, with the one limitation of a household income cap.
Right.
That was a compromise we made along the way to get the bill passed. But
I like what you said there, because some people are complaining about that.
Yep.
But if we didn't have that cap, we wouldn't have it.
We wouldn't have the program. You're
Wouldn't
right.
have the program. So it's one of those things. We'll see how it goes, and then look at maybe adjusting that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. But the cap is 300% of federal poverty, which for a family of four is about $7,900. And that's based.
70.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, definitely. Thank you for that correction. Yeah. Basically, once you're eligible for the program with that income, then you will always be eligible for the program. So even if you get someone in the family gets a raise and goes above that 300% number, you will not be kicked out of the program. So that's an important
I just
thing.
want to make a comment on home educated students.
Yep.
If you go into this program, you're no longer a home education student, you're an EFA student. And there are some guidelines that have to be followed. So, I mean, in some cases, home education don't want anything to do with it, which is fine, but there are home education programs that exist for people, and that it can be used for that. But there are some guidelines, for example,
Yes.
like some testing and that kind of thing. But you can still home educate, but there are some guidelines.
Right. But yeah, this is an option that some home educated students and their families might want to take a look at. As you see in the next slide, their applications are now being accepted. And I think you have on the slide the website you can go to.
I'll cover at the end too.
Yep.
And do we have a number of how many people have already applied?
Yes. As of yesterday, it was over 1,600 applications had been received, and over 800 have been processed by the scholarship organization and passed on to the Department of Education for review. So things are moving very well and smoothly in that regard.
Yeah. Now, just for covering what schools, it's pretty much any approved school, but approved by the DOE, right?
Right.
Which includes religious schools. Like, for example, in this area, St. Francis will be covered. Bishop Girton in Nashua for high school. Trinity in Manchester. So those schools can be used, and we'll cover that more later. But and I mean, charter schools aren't covered because charter schools are already public schools. So if you go to a charter school, it's already, the money follows. So you don't have to worry about charter schools.
Right.
And just a quick note on charter schools, the one closest to Litchfield, which is Founders Academy in Manchester, next year they'll be starting in the 5th grade. So
that's good news.
Yeah.
And so with the application on that page, you'll also see there's a parent handbook that will be important to go through for families trying to get information and find out more about the program. But basically, when you sign up for the program, if you're in a public school now, you unenroll from that public school and become an EFA student. And with the application that's signed, parents agree to abide by all the rules and regulations of the program, agree to use the funds only for allowed expenses that are listed in the handbook, as well as in the law that we passed.
Right. And the thing is, the parent does not get the money. It's in an account for the parent, correct?
That's correct, yes. And that money that goes into the account is the money from the state that would have gone to the public school district to educate that child.
Right.
And that's
This
a
next
perfect
slide,
segue to this slide.
right,
And so the average amount comes to about $4,600 for each student minus the administrative fee. But you can see on this slide that there are basically the basic grant amount and then additional aid categories depending on the needs of the child. For instance, if you qualify for free and reduced lunch, you get an additional almost $1,900, et cetera. So the average works out to be about $4,600. And it's also important to note that you can use that money for any allowable expenses, but then if you have money left over at the end of the year, you don't spend that full amount, that money rolls over to the following year. So it's like a savings account in that regard.
right. Works out good because if you don't use it, then but next year you might have more expenses.
That's right.
Covered, so
yes, or find a new program or additional tutoring might be used, might be needed. So that rollover feature is a very important feature of the bill.
So here are the things that on this slide. What are the allowable expenses? So we wanna,
and as you mentioned, Ralph, tuition at a private school, and it can be a private religious school as well, is an allowable expense, as well as tuition if you want to go to an out-of-district public school. You can use that education freedom account and work out a tuition payment to the out-of-district school. Or if you're, let's say, coming from a homeschool environment and become an EFA student, you can use that money to buy curriculum or textbooks or even computer programs, educational software. Those are all allowable expenses. If you're a student with special needs, you can use that money for additional therapies, occupational behavioral therapies, even equine therapies would be allowable expense under the program. So there's a lot of flexibility for parents to customize their children's education and really put together the best options to meet that child's needs. So I think that these features of the program put it in line with any other of these education savings accounts, education freedom accounts in other states. And there is a growing list. There started out to be 5 at the beginning of 2020, 5 states with similar programs, but that's expanding really due to the pandemic, as we've talked about, and everything that's gone on in the past year. There's been a window opened for parents to see what's going on in education. And they've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly, if you want to put it that way. And things that are going on with mask mandates, et cetera, and discussions about the teaching of critical race theory and so forth. There are more parents around the country looking for options. So this movement for education freedom is spreading rapidly across the nation. It's really a grassroots wildfire that is in progress, and I think will change education for the better for many families.
Right. I mean, a good example is if you might, maybe one of your children is doing great in the public school and what isn't, depending on how they want to be taught. For example, we have in different parts of the state, there's one town that sends some of their kids to a Montessori school, okay, and some to the next town's public school. So it depends on how your child wants to learn or whatnot, or if you want a better and different environments, or even in the case of sometimes bullying, you move your kid to another school.
Yep.
That works out. This can be easily done. Just looking at it before, I looked at, for example, tuition at St. Francis, for example, is about 5.5 thousand for a full week. Program. They have different programs for a 5-day program. So this pretty much will cover a lot of that for St. Francis. If you can get in, they are expanding, I've heard.
Right.
So at the high schools at Trinity in Manchester and Bishop Girton in Nashua, that probably cover maybe a third to a fourth of that cost. So it would definitely help.
It might be interesting to point out that there's nothing preventing a family who gets an education freedom account from also applying for a tax credit scholarship. So they can combine resources there to help with those tuition payments that you mentioned.
But all these schools do also have, lower tuition rates depending on the family
and their own scholarships and everything else.
They have their own scholarship programs too.
That's important to point out as well.
So here, how you can do this is you go to educationfreedomnewhampshire.org, and then from there you can click on the buttons and get to New Hampshire Scholarship Fund.org. There's apply, right there, and then you can go to and look at how to go about doing it. Like your handbook and whatnot, you can look at.
Right.
Okay.
There's quite a bit of information on that page.
Right.
Yes.
So it's, if you don't like how things are going, something to look at. But now I guess we can go look at what's the tax credit scholarship program?
Yes.
That's
Passed.
been a while.
Yeah, I think it became effective back in 2013.
Yeah, something like that. I know I was involved with that when I was on the education committee when that started.
Yep.
And I remember we got it through, and so maybe you can cover that a little bit.
Yes. Businesses can take a credit against their business taxes they have to pay to the state for a donation to the tax credit scholarship program, again, run by the same organization that's running the education freedom accounts. And likewise, based on legislation that was passed about a year or so ago, individuals can also take a tax credit with a donation, and it would be a tax credit off the interest and dividends tax.
Which is going away.
Yes, right. Which in the new budget, as you point out, is going to be phased out over the next 5 years, I believe it is.
Right. How this works is, for example, a business can donate to this tax credit scholarship program, and that money comes off their business taxes that they pay to the state.
Right.
So just like no difference than when you deduct charity expenses from your IRS. So to say, people used to complain about that, but they can deduct charity expenses now, and this is just another charity expense.
Right.
They can
And I think it's a 85% credit that they can take against what they donate. Yeah.
So, right. So if they donate $1,000, they can take a $850 credit.
Correct. Yep. Right. So that's a very popular program, and there have been hundreds of students each year helped with scholarships in that program. And I know a number of them are going to the schools you just mentioned with those tax credit scholarships.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that could be more or depending on the student situation. I believe that pretty much did away with the limit on the tax credit, or it's a higher limit anyway, but
yes, right.
But I guess the lower you are in income, the more you can.
Right. Yeah. They award the scholarships really based on need.
Right.
Yes, you're right. Yes.
So, yeah. And like we said at the beginning, some people complaining about how much they can deduct. How much money income they can make for the education freedom account. But like I said, we we had to put some limit on or we wouldn't get the law passed.
Right. And
So-
and this scholarship program, tax credit scholarship program, also has the same 300% of federal poverty family income cap on it. But there's talk about
Increasing
doing an adjustment on that. So,
Yeah.
but really, with all of these programs, it's a grassroots effort. And, as parents find out about these programs and want these programs, you should contact a state legislator in your case
Right.
and tell them we want more capability to direct our own children's education. We don't want to be limited based on our address to one school. We want options.
Right. Now, they had a thing here, expanding charter schools. Like I mentioned, a couple of charter schools that we have students going to. One in Nashua is the School of Academy and the
Arts and Sciences?
Arts and Science.
Yep.
What's it called?
Academy of Arts and Sciences?
Academy is it's a STEM school.
Yep.
In Nashua. So if you have a student that wanted science, technology, math, there's one at the STEM school there in the Academy of Arts and Sciences there. In Nashua, that some students are going to. And I've been there a couple of times. They do a great job. The Founders Academy right on Perimeter Road, North Perimeter Road in Nashua, in Manchester, not that hard to get to.
Right.
Academy of Arts and Sciences in Nashua is pretty much across from the community college in Nashua, near that area anyway, on down. But the Founders Academy, it's they call it traditional education, and it's next year they're going to start with the 5th grade. Now, to that, you just go to the charter school. They have a lottery for people to get in. They do have a number of people that can go. So, and it's an open lottery, and it's anybody can go. I mean, you just luck out. One thing good about it, if you already have a child in there, your next child is
Right.
automatically eligible.
Right.
So,
Right.
so that
And-
works out good
Yeah.
on that. But
And as you mentioned before, there's no tuition because the
It's a
charter
public
schools
school.
are public schools and funded by the state.
right.
Yeah.
So there's no tuition at all. They do have more fundraisers, but then public schools are fundraisers too. But so
Yeah.
people complain about that. But when my grandkids or even daughter would go into the public schools, there was all kinds of fundraisers. So
Sure.
there's nothing new there.
Yeah.
But and then Learn Everywhere.
Yeah, Learn Everywhere is a program developed by the Department of Education. There were many districts that had what they called extended learning opportunities to give credits to students who took programs outside of the classroom, outside of the school. The school would give them credits for, English, math, whatever, based on the program they went to. But that was limited, and not all districts have that program. So the state Board of Education and Department of Education established this Learn Everywhere program to recognize that kids learn everywhere, and that there were organizations like Boys and Girls Club, First Robotics, that offer great educational opportunities. And so those organizations can apply to the state board, get accredited to award scholarships. And so a student, for instance, taking part in First Robotics can actually get graduation credits awarded to them by the State Department of Education.
Right, because there were some cases where some schools wouldn't accept it, but now they sort of don't have too much of a choice. Good example, when this started some dozen years ago, for expanded learning or whatever, it was when I was on the school board. one of the issues came up with, you had to take 2 semesters of phys ed, one in your freshman year, mandatory one, which covered health and stuff, and then 1 semester sometime afterwards.
Right.
But one of the things that got kids in the senior year, some couldn't fit in that other semester. So what we did was working with the head coach and students, and I was a rep from the school board. We looked at, if you're in a varsity sport,
Oh,
okay, and depending on the varsity sport, okay, that could satisfy your half credit. For example, if you were played varsity football, 1 year you have varsity basketball 1 year, but and the opposite end, if you were on the golf, you had to do 4 years.
Right.
I mean, depending on, and so that was again learning everywhere. You got credit for doing that.
Yes.
But now there's other subjects people are taking that. For example, I don't know if you're taking a course, a course in a college,
Right. Or
that should count for a math course or a science course or whatever.
Or even they have programs at Boys and Girls Clubs. Or, I've been trying to get the Civil Air Patrol to apply because you have a branch of the Civil Air Patrol in Nashua, I believe.
Oh yeah, Nashua does. Yeah.
And so with their aeronautics and STEM programs that the cadets have to go through, they should apply to Learn Everywhere program because those kids could get graduation credits. Yeah,
I know we had some discussion on that last year where some schools were allowing it and some schools weren't. And I mean, it gets to be a mishmash.
Right.
So, for example, if you go to a school and they allowed it and they give you credit, but then you transfer to a school, now what do you do? So that's why a lot of this stuff now, hopefully, we get into the DOE Board of Education to make some of those decisions, which is, sometimes it gets really dicey.
Yeah.
Okay.
Want to go back to the learning pods, if I could.
Okay. Yeah.
The department reached an agreement with a company called Prenda. And they're started out about 3 years ago in Arizona and have expanded rapidly to set up small group learning pods, as they're called, or in Arizona, they call them micro schools, but 5 to 10 students in a pod with a guide or teacher to help them. And now in New Hampshire, through this program, a school district could set up learning pods. Or if the district didn't want to do it, a group of parents could get together and set up a community pod. And in both cases, the guide or the teacher for that pod will be paid out of federal funds for the next 2 years.
Oh, okay.
So if you set up a community pod, you don't have to worry about that expense. And the district, if they set up a pod, let's say maybe because they have a group of students who want to wear masks and or who don't want to wear masks, they could set up a learning pod for those students. The federal funds would pay for the teacher for that pod, and they would still get full credit for attendance for that child.
Right.
So the district makes out. But in the area, there's going to be some information sessions coming up in the next week, if I could mention them.
Yeah, definitely, please.
These are going to be information sessions with staff from Prenda to explain the whole program and answer any questions. The first one is on Tuesday, the 7th, in Derry at Moo's Place Ice Cream. And that's going to be...
I know where that is.
You do? Okay.
I go to Moo's.
Yep. That's at 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
Okay, and that's what date?
The 7th, on
The
Tuesday.
7th, next Tuesday.
Yep.
Okay.
Then on Thursday, the 9th, they're going to be in Nashua at Prest Cafe at 6 p.m.
Okay, I don't know where that is.
And then on Friday, the 10th, there'll be an online or virtual information session that you can register for, and they'll send you a link. And do the information session
Do
virtually.
do you have a link?
I don't have a link for that, but if you go to Facebook, just type in Prenda NH.
PRENDA.
PRENDA, correct. And there'll be all the events, upcoming events listed there on the Facebook page.
Mm.
So, they're gathering a lot of interest in New Hampshire. A lot of, there's Londonderry, I believe, has set up district pods.
Okay.
And 4 or 5 other districts as well. And a host of community pods have been established. So it's a great opportunity for some people have referred to it as getting back to like the one-room schoolhouse type of environment,
Right.
because they group grades together.
Mm.
Typically,
Oh,
it's like
yeah.
Kindergarten through 2nd, 3rd through 5th, and then 6th through 8th. They're only doing K through 8 with Prenda right now, but it's a pretty unique program, and it's
Right.
getting a lot of excitement around the state.
Yeah, the first school I went to was a one-room schoolhouse, 1 through 8, for half the year before they opened up a big school.
Yeah,
You know,
right.
What
Yeah.
happened to a lot of those one-room schoolhouses? They
Yes.
disappeared.
Yeah, but I think parents are looking at this as well as the other options, and just by the number of applications we've seen for the Education Freedom account program, there is interest out there, and I think programs like this that you're doing here, Ralph, are a real help in letting
That's
people
what we
know
wanted
that
to
there
do.
are options available.
Yeah, that's what the point. That's why I wanted to do this.
Yes. Yeah.
Initially, I wanted to get Kate Baker in, who runs the program, but her schedule was getting to be so.
Yeah.
That's why I say, hey, you've been doing this. You got this information.
Yeah.
Which I should have too, but anyway. Yeah, but Glenn's been fighting this, but this is great. So I think that we pretty much cut into our half hour, and so if anybody has any questions, my email, and Glenn's will be up there too, so you can email us, and we'll let you know if you have any questions. And I'll put the YouTube up on the different sites, and hopefully, you can use it, and
Right.
other people, other sites, other places can use it.
Right.
So with that, thank you. And hopefully in a couple of weeks, a month, when we get some action together on what we're going to do for next year, we'll have another show. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.